This is a terrible way to spend an afternoon. Come on, keep moving.
Alright gamers, buckle up, because today we're diving headfirst into the adrenaline-pumped, explosively entertaining world of Bulletstorm, a game that turned the FPS genre on its head faster than you can say headshot. Imagine a world where your typical run-of-the-mill shooter gets a jolt of caffeinated madness, mixed with a dash of absurdity, and voila, you've got Bulletstorm. Now, you might be thinking, what's so special about another game where you shoot stuff? Oh dear viewer, Bulletstorm isn't just another game. It's like that one guest at a party who brings fireworks instead of potato chips. This game redefined what it means to be a shooter, taking the gaming world by storm. Pun intended, by the way. With its over-the-top action, unique gameplay mechanics, and humor level that's off the charts. But hold on, it's not all rainbows and headshots. Bulletstorm has had its fair share of controversies, from its eyebrow-raising marketing strategies to debates over its portrayal of violence. And let's not forget, in the midst of all this chaos, a little gem called Bulletstorm VR is gearing up to storm the virtual world in early 2024. Are you ready to dissect this beast of a game? To analyze its guts, glory, and the occasional gory bits? Let's take a wild ride through the history and evolution of Bulletstorm, peeling back the layers of this explosively entertaining yet controversial game. And who knows, by the end of this, you might just see FPS games in a whole new light. Hello Skillshot virtuosos and adrenaline junkies, welcome to the Retro Reload, where we dive into the explosive world of gaming history and dissect titles that rewrote the rules, all with a dash of humor and a high score in nostalgia. Now let's hit the rewind button and zoom back to the origins of Bulletstorm, where it all started. Picture this, the late 2000s, a time when the gaming industry was bustling with innovation and the FPS genre was like the cool kid on the block. Enter People Can Fly. Nah, I'm not talking about superheroes. I'm talking a Polish game developer with a knack for action-packed games. And then of course, there's Epic Games, the big shots behind the Unreal Engine. And you guessed it, Fortnite. These two gaming powerhouses decided to join forces, and thus, the idea of Bulletstorm was born. But what lit the fuse for this explosive project? It's like they looked at traditional FPS games and said, let's turn this up to 11. Influenced by the era's gaming trends and desire to inject some serious fun into the FPS genre, Bulletstorm started taking shape. In the early stages of development, the team at People Can Fly faced more hurdles than a track athlete. They were charting new territory, mixing traditional shooter elements with something fresh and untested. The game was shaping up to be a wild cocktail of high-octane shooting, unique gameplay mechanics, and a narrative style that was anything but ordinary. The big question on their minds was, how do we make shooting not just about pointing and shooting? Enter the game's core innovation, the Skillshot system. This wasn't just your average aim and fire setup. Oh no, Bulletstorm was gearing up to reward players for creativity in their carnage. The more inventive your skills, the more points you rack up. It's like rewarding a chef for the most creative use of bacon. It was bold, it was different, and it was darn exciting. But it wasn't just the gameplay that set Bulletstorm apart. The game was marinated in a sauce of humor and over-the-top action, creating a narrative that was just as self-aware as it was absurdly entertaining. This wasn't just a game, it was a statement that said, hey, shooting games can have a sensor too. It was basically the Deadpool of FPS. As Bulletstorm progressed through its development journey, the team behind it was crafting not just another shooter, but a game that would challenge the norms, push boundaries, and maybe, just maybe, redefine what an FPS game could be. In February of 2011, Bulletstorm finally burst onto the scene, guns blazing and wisecracks flying, ready to flip the FPS world upside down. But what exactly made this game a genre-bending roller coaster? Let's dissect this beast and see what makes it tick. First up, the star of the show, the Skillshot system. This isn't your grandpa's point-and-shoot affair. It's just like the game devs asked, why simply shoot your enemies when you can send them flying into a giant cactus? The Skillshot system encouraged players to get creative with their kills. The crazier and more elaborate the kill, the more points you scored. It was like a game show hosted by a pyromaniac. Bizarre, chaotic, and ridiculously fun. Comparing Bulletstorm to its FPS cousins is like comparing a fireworks show to a candlelight dinner, where most shooters at the time were about precision and cover-based tactics. Bulletstorm was about leaping into the fray, guns and witty one-liners at the ready. It was less about taking cover and more about being the cover, a one-person army with a penchant for destruction. But the gameplay wasn't the only thing that set Bulletstorm apart. The game's narrative and aesthetic choice were like a cheesy action movie on a sugar rush. The dialogue was crammed with humor, delivered by characters who knew they were in an over-the-top shooter and reveled in it. It was a refreshing change from the usually serious and grim-faced protagonist of the genre. Bulletstorm didn't just break the fourth wall, it blasted it to smithereens with a grin. The game's environments and enemies were equally outlandish. They weren't just running through planned corridors or generic war zones. Each level was a playground of destruction, filled with opportunities to use the environment to your lethal advantage. And the enemies, let's just say, they were as varied as the ways you could dispatch them. In a genre filled with games taking themselves too seriously, Bulletstorm was the much-needed class clown. It dared to laugh in the face of danger, all while delivering a gaming experience that was as rewarding as it was entertaining. This was a game that didn't just challenge players to be deadly, but to be deadly imaginative. And in doing so, it didn't just evolve the FPS genre, it gave it a swift kick in the pants. Now let's fast forward to Bulletstorm's grand entrance into the gaming world, its release day. And the game hits the shelves like a rogue wave, ready to soak everyone in its path with its unapologetic, over-the-top style. The marketing for Bulletstorm was like the game itself, loud, proud, and in your face. The trailers were a symphony of explosions, one-liners, and enough action to make the most seasoned action movie star raise an eyebrow. And let's not forget the demos, which were like giving gamers a single piece of candy and asking them not to want the whole bag. The hype train was not just leaving the station, it was blasting off. But how did this all translate to sales and reviews? Well, it was a bit of a roller coaster ride. While Bulletstorm didn't exactly shatter sales records, it did rack up some impressive numbers, proving there was a market for gamers that dared to be different. Critics, on the other hand, were like kids at a magic show. Some were utterly mesmerized, while others were busy trying to figure out how the tricks were done. The game received its fair share of praise for innovation, humor, and gameplay mechanics, but also faced some criticism, mostly for its story, and let's just say, colorful language. But what about the players, the heart and soul of any game? The initial reaction from the gaming community was like catching a live wire, electrifying and a bit unpredictable. Some players fell head over heels for the game's unorthodox approach and adrenaline-fueled gameplay, while others were more hesitant, unsure of what to make of this maverick in the FPS world. Despite the mixed reception, Bulletstorm carved out its niche, gathering a cult following that appreciated the game for exactly what it was, a no-holds-barred, irreverent, action-packed romp through a world that didn't take itself too seriously. It was clear that Bulletstorm wasn't just another game. It was a statement, a rebellious yell in a genre crowded with whispers. And as we'll see, this yell would echo in various ways, stirring up not just praise and admiration, but also controversy and debate. Alright, strap in, because we're venturing into the eye of the storm. It's like the game was a magnet for debate. And let me tell you, it wasn't just about whether pineapple belongs on a pizza. First up, the Skillshot system, the crown jewel of Bulletstorm. It was revolutionary, sure, but it also raised more eyebrows than an unexpected plot twist in a soap opera. Critics and concerned citizens alike questioned the game's approach to violence. It wasn't just shooting enemies, it was about annihilating them in the most imaginative, and let's be honest, sometimes gruesome way possible. This sparked a heated debate about violence in video games and whether Bulletstorm was pushing the envelope or setting it on fire. Then there was the marketing campaign, which, in true Bulletstorm fashion, was as subtle as a sledgehammer. Remember Duty Calls? That not-so-gentle parody of the Call of Duty series? It was a bold move poking fun at one of the biggest franchises in gaming history. While it certainly got laughs and turned heads, it also stirred the pot, drawing criticism for its brazen approach. It was like throwing a firecracker into a room and waiting to see how people reacted. Some found it hilarious, others, not so much. And let's not forget the legal and ethical hurdles. Bulletstorm navigated through a minefield of concerns about censorship, age ratings, and the broader implications of its content. The game was a poster child for the debate over where to draw the line in video game violence and adult content. Despite these challenges, or perhaps because of them, Bulletstorm remained a topic of intense discussion and analysis. It was more than just a game. It was a case study in game design, marketing, and the cultural impact of digital entertainment. Love it or hate it, Bulletstorm wasn't a game that could be ignored. It was a conversation starter, a rule breaker, and all above, a game that dared to be different in a sea of sameness. And as we'll see, its impact didn't stop at the water's edge. It set ripples through the gaming world, influencing how games were made, played, and perceived. In the wake of the storm that was Bulletstorm, let's talk about its legacy and influence on the gaming world. This isn't just about a game that came, saw, and kicked butt. It's about how that butt-kicking game changed the landscape. Bulletstorm may have not been the commercial juggernaut that reshapes an entire industry, but its ripples were felt far and wide. It was like a mad scientist experiment in gaming. Not everything worked perfectly, but the results were fascinating and, in many ways, groundbreaking. Back to the Skillshot system. This gem of a game didn't just fade into obscurity, it inspired developers to think outside of the box, or rather, shoot outside of the box. Games started exploring new ways to make combat more engaging, rewarding creativity and style over the standard point-and-shoot gameplay. It's like Bulletstorm handed out a playbook on how to make violence in games not just fun, but imaginatively fun. Then there's the game's tone and narrative style. Bulletstorm proved that there's a place in the industry for titles that don't take themselves too seriously, that blend action with humor and aren't afraid to be over the top. It opened the door for games that wanted to be the wild child, the class clown, the rebel without a cause. This cheeky, irreverent attitude started popping up more and more in games, showing that the medium could be as diverse in tone as it is in genre. But it wasn't all about fun and games. Bulletstorm also played a significant role in the ongoing conversation about violence in video games. It became a sort of case study, a reference point in discussions about how far is too far, and what the implications are for players and the industry. It's like the game became a teaching moment, for better or for worse, about the power of interactive media and the responsibilities that come with it. And now, with the upcoming release of Bulletstorm VR, the legacy continues. This isn't just a rehash, it's a reimagining, bringing the over-the-top action and creative carnage from the original into the immersive world of virtual reality. It's like Bulletstorm is saying, "You thought that was fun? Hold my virtual beer." From its groundbreaking Skillshot system to its brash and unapologetic style, Bulletstorm has been like a renegade artist in the gallery of video games. It didn't just play by different rules, it wrote its own. This game showed us that there's room in the gaming universe for titles that are as irreverent as they are inventive. It pushed players not only to just experience a game, but to engage with it in ways that were as creative as they were chaotic. The controversies and debates that swirled around Bulletstorm only underscored its impact. Whether it was discussions about violence in video games, the boundaries of humor and taste, or the challenges of marketing, Bulletstorm was more than a game. It was a conversation starter. It didn't just occupy a space on the shelves, It occupied a space in our cultural discourse, challenging us to think about what we play and why. Looking ahead, the anticipation surrounding Bulletstorm VR suggests that the legacy of Bulletstorm is far from over. This franchise isn't content to rest on its laurels. It's strapping on a VR headset and marching into a new frontier, ready to challenge our expectations all over again. Whether it will redefine VR gaming or serve as a wild experiment remains to be seen. But the one thing is certain, the Bulletstorm universe continues to expand and evolve, refusing to fade quietly into the books of gaming history. In the end, Bulletstorm stands for a testament to the creative and often unpredictable nature of video games. It's a reminder that sometimes the most enduring stories in gaming come from those who are willing to take the risks, push boundaries, and yes, stir up a little storm. Bulletstorm may have started as just another game, but it evolved into a symbol of innovation, a beacon of controversy, and a chapter in the ever-growing saga of video game history. As we power down our consoles and step back into reality, we're left with the echoing thunder of a storm that, while it may have passed, will never be forgotten. If you like learning about Bulletstorm and want to hear more about the history of gaming, click this video here and stay tuned in to the Retro Reload.